Well, a mother wanted to teach her daughter a moral lesson. She gave her daughter a quarter and a dollar bill. They drove to church. She said, I want you to decide what you're going to give to the church in the offering. Is it going to be the quarter or is it going to be the dollar? You decide. And after church was over, they were driving home. The mother asked her daughter, well, what did you decide to do? And the daughter said, well, I was going to give $1. But the preacher said, the Lord loves a cheerful giver. And I got to thinking, I would be happier if I had the dollar. So I just gave the quarter to the church. I did what the preacher said. It's interesting, the things we value. We're going to go back to that in a moment. But I would like to begin by taking you this morning to a time in that part of the Bible where Christianity really takes root. And that's the Roman Empire. Where against the odds, if you think about it historically, against the odds, the Apostle Paul is doing what we have been doing. He's trying to build a church. And if you think our times are tough today, here's what Paul was up against. The Roman Empire, and you have to contextualize this, in the first century of the Christian era, it was the only superpower. Just them. And the essence of the existence of the Roman Empire was very simple and straightforward. Global domination and conquest. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Some places. It was a society that was all about itself. And the power of the state. And its people, they were the most self-indulgent the ancient world has ever known. They wanted bigger and better and more of everything. And it was a society of haves and have-nots. There really wasn't much of a middle class. And it was built on the backs of human slaves. It was a society that was morally bankrupt. It was spiritually empty, and it is in that setting that Paul is building a church. And we are as well. And I'd like to zero in on this letter that Paul writes to the Corinthian community. And he's just such a wonderful crafting this letter that we heard, that Joyce read a section from. Paul, he has an appeal. He is appealing to the Corinthian Christians to do what? To support the mission of the church in the world in a special collection they were going to be having. And it's not much different today in this respect. Paul is struggling to build a church community And the larger message that he is bringing to them, it's the same message that we bring today. It is the good news of the story of God's love for us that is expressed in the birth and life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And this is a message about God's act of love and grace in freely giving us his son Jesus. That's bottom line, was what he was saying. And the reading this morning, specifically from the second letter to the Corinthian community, it's, among other things, it was a cover letter. It was a cover letter informing the community, we're going to take an offering. It was a cover letter saying there's something important in the next phase of what we feel God is having us do as we build this church. It's a cover letter on its caring ministries. And it could very well be a stewardship campaign letter. A number of you, if you've been a regular contributor to this church, this last week, you got a letter like that from me. I may have even scribbled a note on there just thanking you for all that you do for the church, but it's very similar to what Paul did here in writing a letter to say, hey, something's coming up, and I want you to be aware of it. And there is a strong mission component to his message. But ultimately, that letter is about Paul stating very simply about giving. And he uses that classic line that we've heard many times where it says that whoever sows sparingly will reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will reap generously. This blessing and this joy of being a steward in giving of all of our resources, of all of who we are. And today, we probably wouldn't be as descriptive as Paul is here. We would probably narrow it down and essentially say, well, you get out of something what you put into it. And that's what Paul is saying here. Paul is also clear that this is something in our steward of life. It's something that we should want to do, not something you feel forced to do or pressured to do. For he continues in his letter, he says, now each of you should be giving what you have decided in your own heart. And it's really no one else's business but your business before God. Not reluctantly or under compulsion, or as the little girl liked hearing, for God loves a cheerful giver. So, what happened when they gave? What happened? When we know the early Christians, they gave generously. They gave radically. They sowed stuff. They gave to people in need. They took care of each other. And how they cared for each other was the most dynamic witness to those who were observing the faith, wondering what was going on. They said, there's something different about that crowd. There's something different about how they value each other. They gave and they helped each other. And you could very easily say that the church prevailed through their giving and uncompromising devotion to the lordship of Jesus. That's how the church prevailed as Paul guided them through this. And I would continue, as we continue being about like what Paul was in planting churches and developing churches, this church will only prevail in the future because of our ongoing, uncompromising devotion to the lordship of Christ today. That is always first. Who is Christ to you? Not how much we give, but how is his lordship exemplified in your life. Now, for sure, our stewardship of money, of time, of talent, it provides the resources that exemplify for all how we care today and also how we are devoted to Christ. People will look at that and say, God must really be doing something to that group. Look at what they're doing. Look at how they are engaged and involved in the community. Look at the missions they support. So what I'd like to do is ask a question. What about you in your giving? I have a quarter and I have $1, okay? Now, I want to share something special about this particular dollar. First of all, we should note that our ministry is dynamic. You see the pictures of the screen up above? Those are not old pictures of the old days at the movie theater or what happened when we had groundbreaking for this building or that building. Those are pictures that was taken in this community in just the last few months. You can see smiling faces, these people who are engaged in sharing and celebrating, giving blood, making chili, reaching out to the community, helping families with some lawn care when they need it. But it is a dynamic community. But we're at a crossroads now where we're looking at what's next for this church and its ministry. And so there's the quarter and there's the dollar, but I wanted to share this dollar. This is not just any dollar. My hope, my prayer, my vision, my dream is that a dollar like this will represent kind of the dollar each of us individually chooses to give. And the reason I say this is unique, I remember a gathering before Fox River existed. We were not even a church then. There was no movie theater, there was no building, there was no property, there was nothing. We had no idea where we would even be meeting other than we felt God wanted to plant a congregational presence in this community. And a handful of people got together, and it came time to where some decisions needed to be made. Are we going to do what we feel God would have us do in building and growing a church? And it's very interesting from the standpoint that we had no plan. We did not have all the resources in the bank. We didn't work through all of the negatives and the positives. If we had done that, we would never be here. Because it wouldn't be faith, it would be something we planned and we had it all figured out. But it was interesting that that group pulled out a $1 bill, and this is it. It's going to be in our library. It's not just going to be a library. It's having a rare book collection, but also the archives of the church. This particular dollar has a number of signatures on it. Never forget it. Many of those people are still here. And someone pulled out a $1, and they all signed and said, well, Lonnie, here's the first $1. We have no idea where we're going, but we want you to know we're in. And so I always, when I have the confirmation class, when they spend the day apart with Pastor Lonnie and we share stories of our church, I always pull this out. And I say, you know, when we put our name on it, we say, Lord, I'm committed to this. And so we're at a point now in our church where we're looking at our annual stewardship campaign. For those of you who are guests, we only do this once a year, okay? You happen to hit the Sunday where we talk about our stewardship. I want to encourage you as we think about when we offer our estimate of intended giving. There's a number of things that can challenge us. One, we have there's like a staircase. We have areas of giving. We know how many families give at certain levels in the church. And so one of the opportunities is to go to the next step. What do I feel I've got to do to go to the next step in my giving? Or maybe you're hit and miss in your stewardship, and you give as just when it's convenient, and that's fine too. But maybe it would be a decision to say, regularly, I'm going to give of my resources and my time in ways that honor God. Well, when I'm asked the question, Lonnie, what should I give? The best answer that I can give, that I offer to you, is in your stewardship of life's resources, do what represents you, okay? Do what represents you as you are at the foot of the cross of Christ, realizing the price that was paid for you, and what do we do in response to that? I know I am grateful for the church. I'm grateful to be able to come here for many reasons. It is a place where I can renew and grow in my faith. It is a place where I can embrace God's presence and God's guidance in my life. And when we give through the church, we need to realize it doesn't stay here. We give through the church, not to the church. It's always representing in ways that serve people who are in need, who need to be blessed, who need to be cared for. I'm grateful that the church has been here for my family. I'm grateful that we try to be of help to each other as a community of faith. I'm grateful for the many caring ministries of our church. You go here throughout the week, and most times you'll see there's a small group that's gathered, a support group. It could be a support group of someone who's lost a spouse, or someone who's working through some addiction issues, or just a support group that's being with others who want to grow in their faith. And I'm grateful that we reach out beyond the immediate circle to others who are in need in the community. For this is a place in our community for families who's caring for family members in need. It's a place where they're able to go and have a coffee and a program and get support as they care for a family person in need. And the truth is, if we never gave, this church wouldn't be here. And the church needs to be here. And so this kind of giving is the giving that pleases God. So I just want to encourage you as you ponder what God is having you do in the stewardship of your time and talent and treasure. I want to encourage you to give the $1 if you could, okay? Be a cheerful giver in that. But also your time and how you can be involved in the various ministry of the church. And in doing so, we honor God, and it is the greatest witness we could ever have. Let us pray.